YouTube boxing came out of nowhere and immediately became a goofy but fan favourite part of the sport. I'm not going to explain the entire history because, to be quite frank, everyone and their mum decides to do that these days. But all you need to know is that it wouldn't have been possible without these four people: Jake Paul, Logan Paul, Deji and KSI. While Joe Willer and Theo Baker created the foundation, these four men set the high standard of quality. And as time's gone on and we've seen both crazy and disappointing events, it goes without saying that recently something just feels off. Many have said that the excitement for these matchups has simply just not been there, and although people are watching, it's evident that the viewership has just been slowly decreasing event after event. Some people have blamed it on politics, saying that certain people in the scene are protecting fighters from getting in the matchups that the fans actually want to see, and while that may be partially correct, the truth is that YouTube boxing has lost the thing that made it amazing: the story. Alright, so you guys are probably thinking, what on earth does this guy mean by the story? And yeah, I do kind of agree with you that it is confusing, considering that there are so many other problems in the YouTube boxing scene, preventing it from growing and becoming massive. As I said at the beginning, there's a group of people who think that there's a shallow government who are preventing fighters from getting in the matchups that we really want to see. As well as that, there's a lack of promotion from the fighters, a lack of content from the promotions. But in my opinion, none of that really matters. Sure, if it was fixed, then that would be great. We could all go to bed with a smile on our face. But what you need to realize is that any form of entertainment that you watch, be it movies, TV shows, music even, they all have a structure which comes from a story. And yeah, there's many different structures, but they're all implemented with the same idea, which is to keep people hooked to watch to the end. And while YouTube boxing is very different and in its own kind of realm, it's no different. The reason that we as viewers love it so much and always watch every event is because of the story that has been there since the beginning. And don't get me wrong, there are new stories starting now. There's Dean versus Waleed. That story's only just started. But as I said at the beginning, the stories that we care about and keeps the views high are the stories of the four front runners of this scene: KSI, Deji, Jake and Logan Paul. But this is the problem: their stories have either ended, randomly stopped, or just been cancelled for some reason. And trust me, I know it sounds confusing, but please watch the end and then you're going to understand perfectly what the problem is and how it can actually be fixed. Out of these four guys, Deji's story is the only one that has had a smooth ending, as in the beginning we were hooked by the fact he kept losing and followed his story all the way until he got his first win, where he got the happy ending that he deserved. And just to showcase how strong his viewership was because of the fact people wanted to see him win a fight, he was able to headline a card against Alex Wasabi and pull over 100,000 pay-per-view buys. However, once his story ended and he went on to fight Floyd Mayweather, who's obviously a much bigger draw than Alex Wasabi, they couldn't even pull half of that 100,000. Again, some people will blame this on Deji's lack of promo, but the truth is people already saw this happy ending. And although it was interesting to see the result, why pay money for a fight you're not even emotionally invested in? Logan Paul's story wasn't necessarily a boxing one, but instead a way to showcase his mainstream comeback after the Japan incident. People were hooked on the fact that Logan Paul was hopefully going to get beaten up by KSI, and in a way punished for the distress he caused. Unlike Deji, Logan's story actually ended once he fought Floyd Mayweather, as although he was beaten by KSI and turned many people into fans after the way he dealt with the loss, facing Floyd Mayweather in itself was a massive contrast to where he was years before, showcasing how much someone can change, making it the ultimate redemption story. Jake Paul's story started as he was so unliked for his cocky persona and reckless acts that everyone wanted to see him lose. Similarly to the story of Floyd Mayweather, as he stepped up the skill level of each of his opponents, people watched to see him lose, and every time he won, the people tuning into his story from the MMA, boxing and entertainment world simply just doubled. But once he lost to Tommy Fury, who was the opponent that represented the pro boxing world, his story sadly ended due to the fact that the shock factor had gone and it was proved that he now wasn't invincible. He's now fighting Nate Diaz, but it's obvious to see that the hate he's getting now isn't the kind which will help his viewership. So similarly to Logan Paul and Deji, this story has ended, but not in the way he would have wished. Now KSI's story is the only one which hasn't officially ended and is still ongoing, but to put it lightly, it's not looking good. Viewers were hooked on watching KSI fight due to the beef between him and Joe Willer. This simply could have ended once he beat Joe, but with him calling out the Paul brothers, his story changed from beating his arch rival to destroying the villains of the internet. We all tuned in for both of the Logan Paul fights and celebrated with him, but Jake Paul got away lucky. Again, the story could have ended here, but after Jake beat his best friend Gib and then went on to prove he was the best YouTube boxer out there, KSI returned to do what he did to Logan to Jake, now hooking the viewers even more and making his sole purpose to beat Jake Paul. Now even with Jake losing, this doesn't affect KSI's story, as it was simply about ending this rivalry, but this is where things get messy. KSI doesn't want to fight Jake. He now wants to beat Tommy Fury instead, and I can't predict the future and tell you what will happen, but what I can say is that regardless of the result of this fight, KSI's story will never truly be over until he fights Jake Paul. Now with these guys' stories being over and you guys knowing why, the question is how can we create new ones, and the answer is simple: Look, I'm not saying by any means that these guys need a story to make a massive fight. Let's be real, they're some of the biggest content creators in this scene. They could fight my long lost son and still get 1 million pay-per-view buys if they try. But in terms of overall hype and that feeling which divides a fight from being big and massive, having a story that people have followed since the very beginning is always gonna make a fight 10 times bigger. And that's why, in my opinion, if these guys' stories are ending, the YouTube boxing gods need to look to Marvel. I know it sounds very off topic, but just trust me. People have followed the Avengers story since the very beginning, and that's the reasons their films are some of the biggest films on the planet. But they obviously can't have the actors forever, and at some point they had to end their stories, but reintroduce new ones with new characters, new storylines, new plots. And the way they did this was by simply replacing those old characters that we loved with new characters. Like with Iron Man, we've got Spider-Man. With Captain America, we've got the new Captain America. With the Hulk, we've got She-Hulk. And to highlight how important this actually was in Marvel films and in the YouTube boxing scene, it's why in every single past MCU film that's come out, they brought new characters to replace the old ones. And they didn't just do this recklessly. The new characters that they replaced the old characters with all had a relationship with the old characters. And it makes us still want to watch the MCU because we're watching a part of those old characters that we love. And look, KSI and Misfits are already kind of doing this. We all know KSI and Dean the Great have a good relationship. So when we're watching Dean the Great, we're rooting for him because that's KSI's guy. So again, hats off to Misfits for doing this because they know what to do. And I'm sure as KSI's story comes to more of an end, they're going to be emphasizing on this a lot more. But regardless, the 3 other frontrunners, Deji, Logan Paul, Jake Paul, they need to do this as well. If they care about the scene and they want it to succeed, they need to understand that they need more people to represent them fighting. So we're hooked again because we're watching the start of their stories. Yeah, I know, you could say Jake Paul's doing this with MVP, but he's come from the YouTube boxing scene. He should have at least one fighter in this scene who represents him. So here's my pitch, and this comes from a Twitter space that I was in the other day where loads of people were just sharing ideas of how the scene could improve. And I can't say this is fully my idea. I'll put the links of the people who were in the Twitter space below in the description. But the idea was to have a show on maybe DAZN because that's where everything YouTube boxing is these days, and kind of make it like the Ultimate Fighter. If you don't know what the Ultimate Fighter is, it's basically a show where UFC legends go against each other and have 2 different teams who fight against each other, and then there's a winner. That's just it simplified. There's a lot more to it than that. But imagine if there was this show. On one team there was Logan Paul, and on another team there was Deji. And then there was a row of 10 YouTube boxers. They get to pick who they want on their team, and then they go against each other. All to at the end fight on a card. Like Deji and Logan don't even need to fight each other, but the fact that they're training and they're kind of giving these guys advice and they're on their team, that will make it insane. Because as I was saying, these guys are massive regardless. And they don't need the YouTube boxing scene, but the YouTube boxing scene needs them. So taking part in something like this can truly save YouTube boxing. But let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you like this video. I'd be interested to see if you guys disagree with me, but I truly feel like this is the key problem in YouTube boxing because it's going to be successful regardless. We need to understand that there's lots of money being pumped into it and there's big names. But for us to get excited about it again and for us to get emotionally invested and want to watch every event after like KSI stops fighting, we're going to need this. So yeah, please like, subscribe, do all that stuff, and yeah, see you in a bit.